Welcome to the Q&A with Cockrell School Leadership Panel at Gone to Engineering. We'll spend the first 30 minutes getting to know Dr. Christine Julien, Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Then we'll spend the second 30 minutes getting to know Dean Wood, Dean of the Cocco School of Engineering. Both sessions will be moderated by Michele Meyer, Assistant Dean for Student Services, Julia Lamb, President of the Graduate Engineering Council, and Sam Lebus, President of the Student Engineering Council. Thank you for joining, and here we go!
How did you choose to become an engineer?
Oh man, all right. So I have a very curvy road to engineering, I guess. So what I generally say is I didn't choose engineering. Engineering chose me, and I was a super hard sell. So I resisted as long as I possibly could. So I did my undergrad at Washington University in St. Louis. And I went there because I was going to be a doctor. So I majored in biology, and I did in fact complete a major in biology. And growing up, I had zero interest in computers, computing, anything like that. But in college, I had to choose between, and I don't even remember why, but it was two classes I had to choose between. One was Intro to Programming, and I don't remember what the other one was. I really don't remember. And, drug me kicking and screaming into the Computer Science 101 class, but I did it, and I loved it. And in fact, the department chair of the computer science department, I was a sophomore, I was a second year student, called me into his office and he said, we have an award we always give to the best performing first year student in computer science. We'd like to give you this award. And I was kind of like, probably should have looked for my major first. I'm not actually a computer science major. And then the rest is pretty much history. So that was at the point where he kept me in his office for about an hour and said, that's ridiculous. You should be majoring in computer science and engineering. He was right, absolutely right. And I didn't really look back after that. So that's why I chose it, because it chose me. So.
Great. That's a great story. So what is your favorite UT building or spot on campus here at UT?
Okay, so this is a little cliche. Actually, it's super cliche now that I look at your guys' backgrounds. Because the new EER building, we call it new, I don't know how long we're gonna call it new, is actually houses my office. And we came from a building that used to sit on the same site our department did. That was a much gloomier building. I don't know how else to describe it besides in that manner. And I think that the EER, the atrium of the EER, when you walk in that space off of the Speedway side, it is just a beautiful collaborative space. It makes you want to meet the people who are sitting there in the chairs, tables working, and just figure out what they're working on and contribute to the projects they're working on. I just think it's just such a, it's a space for collaboration, and I just love that space. So I'm really lucky to get to walk through my favorite space on campus every single day when we're on campus, and I can't wait to be back on campus.
Agreed. ER is an amazing building. It's really breathtaking. So we have a lot of new students here. So this next question, what advice do you have for new students?
Okay, I don't know how many times you guys have heard this advice already, so I'm going to be stealing the same advice, but and this is coming from a professor. It's my job first, right? That's get to know your professors. It's really hard. It's really daunting. We work as hard as we can to try to tear those walls down. But when professors say, come to my office hours, they mean come to my office hours. They want to get to know you, and it can help you to get to know them as well. When we feel comfortable in our classrooms and we feel like the faculty are invested in us and we're invested in the class, everybody learns better. So that's going to make a better learning environment. But eventually you're going to need, recommendation letters or references for jobs, advice on kind of what classes to take or where to do an internship, that kind of stuff. And it's just easier to break that ice now when everybody's expecting you to break that ice. So you're going to hear this over and over and over again, but definitely biggest piece of advice is get to know your professors. But can I give a second piece of advice too? And that is you can contest all the advice that you're given, which sounds funny to say. Don't contest that piece of advice, not the advice that I give you. But basically, I would say explore this university, right? So whatever department you're in is amazing. Whatever your major is going to be great, but you don't have to stay there and only take classes in that space. So look, explore. It's an amazing university across the board with an engineering, but also without engineering. And so you should explore all of those options available to you.
Great advice. I definitely agree with the professor's one too. So what do you like most about your current role?
it's the opportunity to interact with students, I think. I get, so I mean, that's why I'm in the job in the first place, but kind of as I've even stepped into this assistant dean position, I get a chance to interact with different students from more departments and more areas across campus and to talk about more things, and our students are amazing. And so I just love to kind of spend time with students, have students in my office just shooting the breeze about really anything at all. And so that's both graduate students, undergraduate students. Like the time I spend one-on-one with my graduate students is just really, really rewarding. So I think students is what I like about my role in general, and just the opportunity to guide students, advise students, and then see them be super successful on their own. Like just to make sure that they have the tools to prove themselves and be successful. I think that's the most rewarding thing about my job.
Awesome. So next question. When you were in college, what was a project that you worked on or an activity you participated in that you really enjoyed?
Well, I'm old, so college was a long time ago. Let me think. Gosh, I'm trying. So WashU was a smaller institution, so everybody basically lived on campus all the time. So it was amazing in that respect. Something I remember spending a lot of time on, at least the last 2 years, was we had a very strong undergraduate TA program. In fact, all of the teaching assistants for the undergraduate courses were upper division undergraduate students. And so that was a work-study job for me. But I really enjoyed doing it. And I would say maybe looking back, it was pretty formative too, right? It was how I kind of cut my teeth on teaching, especially teaching technical things, mentoring other more junior people. So I think that that's something that's memorable and had a high impact, I think.
How much time should the students plan on studying for each of their classes?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I clearly am not going to give an answer that is a concrete number. This is a reasonable question to ask your peer. It's going to be different for every class. And different classes require different types of studying. So one of the class I teach most frequently is an undergraduate course on algorithms. And algorithms is a tough class to teach because you really have to convey this fact that you have these moments, right? You read a homework assignment, on a Tuesday, and you can't decide, well, to do next Tuesday, I'll work on it on Monday, because the ideas might not come to you on Monday. Like, it's just the way the process works, right? So you've got to read through the entire thing, and it's just got to sit there and kind of marinate the entire week. And, you'll be biking down the street or something and be like, oh, I know the answer to number 3 all of a sudden, right? And so it's hard to quantify. It sounds like a terrible, vague, like cop out of an answer, but it's, it's hard to quantify how much time you spend. In general, you should think of, there's a rule here probably, and I don't know it, but it's probably 2 to 3 hours outside of class for every hour that you're in class. Am I right, Michele?
Yes.
But again, it's going to vary. There's going to be some classes that exceed that. And the best way to find this information out, and no matter what anybody else tells you, is from your older peer students in your same program. This is the best place to get your information. I know in the ECE department, for example, and I assume this is true in other departments as well, the students will help you rate your schedule. They will say, never take those 2 classes at the same time. That is a terrible idea. Or take these classes together because they actually play off of each other very nicely. And so that's the best source of information is going to be peers and students who've been through that already. And never be afraid to ask the professor, how much time should I be spending on this? I'm spending this much time. Is that how much time you expect me to spend? Is that too much? Is that too little? Good.
If I can popcorn off of that, I love the first thing that you said. That's great advice. Going back to that previous question, you can procrastinate, not too much, but just make sure you've already read and understand the assignment before you start procrastinating.
Yeah, agreed on that one. There's been many times where waiting to the last minute just isn't enough time to get it done. So definitely starting early is perfect advice. So kind of shifting to more outside of university stuff, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Well, actually I really enjoy hiking, and I really enjoy traveling, which I've, done so much less of recently. But I enjoy hiking with my family. So I have 2 daughters, and one's in middle school, one's in elementary school. And so our family will go hiking or bicycling together. That's fun for me. I do enjoy reading, although I find that I have less time these days for reading for fun, but I do enjoy that as well. That's probably a good, yeah, sorry.
What is something that you are proud of outside of work?
I mean, I feel like I've got this. So I'm very proud of my girls. A lot of what I do outside of work and now, given their ages, is around them. I think that one thing I've done with them, but that I think I'm proud of, is I'm a troop leader for one of my daughter's Girl Scout troops. And so that's actually kind of a fun way to also kind of give back to a group of girls, but also spend time with my daughter. And that troop is amazing. So I'm really proud of what we've done with them and what they've accomplished too. So.
I'm really impressed that you have the time.
Well, it's hard, especially in COVID, right? And a bunch of 13-year-olds trying to convince them to do leadership activities, but it's good.
This one's a little more difficult, but tell us about a time that you failed. How did you overcome that failure?
I have to pick one?
I guess whichever one impacted you the most.
Yeah, so I read a really good article. I mean, I think this is kind of all over the place about, how we make CVs that kind of tout all our accomplishments, and that we should all keep a failure CV too, to share with people, especially as they're kind of coming up behind us as part of mentoring, to remind people all of the failures that kind of actually support the work that you're kind of showing off, right? So there's a lot. My failure CV would probably be 3 or 4 times as long as my actual CV, because we submit papers about our research and they get rejected. I think one of the most formative such failures, which I'm going to call it a rejection, not a failure, because it wasn't. I didn't fail. I did learn from it, and actually good things came out of it. Was early in my career as a junior assistant professor, I submitted, there's this National Science Foundation, which is where we get a lot of our research funding from. And I submitted a research proposal to the National Science Foundation called a career proposal. So it's basically laying out a plan for how I'm going to launch my literal research career, right? So it's kind of like everything about you and your identity as a kind of researcher goes into this proposal. And of course it was rejected, right? I mean, this is lots of people have these rejected. And I think I took that really personally the first time it happened. So, I mean, it was the first time I had a proposal rejected. It felt like somebody was judging my ideas and they had found them wanting, and it hurt, right? Because that was, like I said, it's kind of my identity as a researcher. In the end, the fact that I had written that proposal actually got the attention of someone else, and someone else said, oh, that was actually an amazing idea, and they kind of picked it up and helped me get different funding for it. And then when I submitted my kind of career plan, it forced me to kind of reevaluate how I had formulated that plan. I improved it, I submitted it again, did get the funding the next year. So I feel like, the goal is to build, the entire portfolio and to kind of think about, I was given feedback. And so it's kind of, how do you take that feedback, not as a judgment of oneself, but as a kind of piece of guidance on how to improve and make it better. And so that's what I did. And it seemed to work out good.
So I heard that you helped develop the Protect Texas Together app. And I've actually been using that a lot in these last couple of weeks, while I think it was still technically in beta. And so personally, I would like to know how carefully that is being monitored, how careful we should all be about using it every single room that we go into, and also just more about the development process and where that data is going and how it will be used.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. So this is, something I put time into this summer that was really fun to do, because, we do a lot of research that kind of looks at impacts that are 5-10 years out. And this was a way to spend a little piece of every day kind of thinking about something that was going to have impact right now. So that was kind of awesome. So we did have the beta that we released, and then we released the full-fledged app last week. I think it was last week. And so hopefully you got the update, because the update is much improved over the original beta. So in that, everybody should get I think everyone should get the app and use it. So the biggest piece of the app is the ability to kind of monitor your own symptoms over time. So even if you have just kind of, a one-off runny nose or a headache, or you're a little tired, you keep track of that in the app. It doesn't go anywhere. It stays entirely on your phone. And then you get there's an algorithm that was developed by folks at the med school and in health services, to evaluate whether those symptoms are indicative of a concern, and maybe you should stay home and self-isolate and take your classes from home for the time being. And so you get this campus access pass if your symptoms clear you through that algorithm. And if you don't clear through that algorithm, you also get some guidance about who you should call, how you should get tested, and that kind of stuff. All of that information is only stored on your phone. It's not sent to anybody. So the app is really formulated around kind of a community perspective on the community working together to keep the community safe. Yes, you can lie. You can lie in the app and no one will know. You can not get an access pass and come to campus and probably no one will know, because as long as they don't ask to see it, they won't know that you didn't do it. But we don't want to do that because we all want to keep the community safe, right? So that's the idea behind that. The reason I got into it actually is a super interesting story. I do research on kind of opportunistic connections between devices using, say, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi technology. It's kind of wireless technologies. And there's been a lot of work in kind of how to use that to do digital contact tracing. And so in the early conversations about the app, we discussed whether or not we wanted to do that as part of this app. We've decided not to, but one of the things the app does do is it does use Bluetooth to just share anonymous beacons. And so it collects those anonymous beacons. And so what we can generate is a completely anonymous but aggregate view of how social distancing is working on campus. So we can't do things like say these specific students weren't behaving, or these specific faculty, were having lunches in their offices when they weren't supposed to, but we can say these are areas of campus where people tend to be congregating, or this is a room where, a lot of people are checking in and checking out. So there's also the explicit check-in, check-out feature, which is optional, but does help keep labs clean. And so we can get that picture of the campus, which can be useful for kind of how do we plan as we kind of reopen more and more things, how do we plan what seems to be important, where do we need to stage more resources, that kind of stuff. But the stuff we're collecting there is all anonymous.
Is there any way to track if someone happens to say that they're not clear for campus? Is there any way to track like what rooms they said they went into and at what times, and track like everyone else that might have been around them?
So one of the things that can be done is if you're a member of campus and you do eventually test positive for COVID, you can come back and say, oh, and you know what? You can choose to say, I was using the app. Here's the information that you can get out of the app about me. And then we can make a query, especially for the room check-in information, because it was explicitly shared. You can also delete your room check-ins at any time because if you become uncomfortable with sharing that information for whatever reason. But we could use that information, but it is driven by the person who had the positive test, not by the campus going to track them. Does that make sense? So the idea would be like, so there's no information in the app at all about whether or not you actually have COVID, unless you answer the specific question that says, I have COVID, right? There's one question in there that on the symptom survey. Other than that, there's no information even in the app about whether you have that, and none of that information ever leaves the phone. But if through like University Health Services, you were to tell one of their contact tracers, oh, I got a positive test, they could pull that data for you out of the database. That makes sense. And so then you could imagine seeing what rooms were you in, and then we could let somebody else know if they were also in those rooms.
Great. Yeah, I hope that's easy to kind of disperse the information.
Yeah, but we had a really big, we just really wanted to focus really heavily on personal privacy and not having any, violations of kind of data about people. We didn't want to be tracking where people were on campus in any way.
That's really cool. I use that app every day, like especially before I go onto campus, just self-track my symptoms. And I encourage everyone listening to also do the same.
Yes, awesome.
So for the next question, what is your favorite thing about the Cockle School community?
I feel like I'm gonna have to reuse an answer, which is like, isn't that a no-no in something like this? Like I can't say the same thing twice, but it's gotta be our students. Right? We're nothing, I mean, the campus community is defined by the students. The rest of us are here to kind of make sure our students are as successful and they have the best experiences they possibly can. And without our students, we're lost, right? We would be completely, plus like I said before, our students are just amazing and excellent. One of the things I do on a day-to-day basis is advise my PhD students in their research. And it's just, so PhD students are here from, anywhere from 4 to, let's say, 7 years completing their PhD. And it's just so rewarding to watch a student walk through that entire journey. And it's just like, there's a moment almost with every single student, there's a moment when you know, and this happens with undergraduate students too, moment when you know they're ready, like we've done what we can do for this student. The student is going to go out. We are going to be so proud of the student. And I'm getting a little teary because it's kind of heartbreaking, because it's at that point you want to just like hold everybody close and say, don't leave, you're amazing, right? But then you have to cut ties and let people fly. And I that's just, it's so amazing. So that's.
You sound like an amazing advisor.
Oh my God.
Can you share a bit about your role as someone who is guiding the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts here in the Cockrell School?
Yeah, sure. So diversity, equity, inclusion have kind of long been important in the Cockrell School. We have these long-standing programs, and like the Women in Engineering program, the Equal Opportunity in Engineering program, efforts going on in basically all of the departments. And so a year ago, I stepped into this role to kind of just be a shepherd for those programs, right? So kind of understand what the initiatives are across campus, and then truthfully to see what we can do to increase the diversity of across the school, from staff, faculty, undergraduate students, graduate students. Our numbers, like the numbers in other departments across campus and in other campuses across the United States, are not where we want them to be in terms of the representation of Black students, Hispanic students, and for us, female students as well. And so to kind of look at how can we take a unified approach to increase the diversity for our student populations, that's both undergraduate and graduate students, the faculty and the staff, and also make sure that everybody just feels like they belong in the Cockrell School, so that it's an inclusive, welcoming environment for everybody. So in the past year, we've kind of looked at initiatives around faculty recruiting to try to change the numbers of the faculty that we're hiring. We've looked at programs for students, extending those WEP programs and the EOE programs. And so there's a lot of activity that are going on.
Awesome. Building off that, can you talk about the class that Dr. Moore offered this summer?
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. So, and the best thing about, maybe it's not the best thing about this class, but something that's also amazing about this class is all of it's publicly available. So anybody after I finish talking can go get the details. But my understanding is, so Dr. Moore is the head of our DDCE. I'm on the spot now and I can't think of what DDCE stands for, Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. And so thank you. But he's also an American history professor here at UT. And he teaches this class as an undergraduate studies class, is my understanding. And what he decided to do was to reframe it into a 6-week crash course in the history of the Black experience in America. And of course, because he's a professor and like we all are, he couldn't do it in 6 weeks. So it actually became 7 weeks at the last minute, which was fantastic for all of us that were participating. But basically, he just kind of started at the beginning. He started at 1619 and went straight through to the present day, talking about what it's been like to be a Black person in the United States. And it was, I mean, this is the kind of stuff we've all learned in bits and pieces and maybe haven't learned in other cases, brought into one place with a set of reading materials. And man, the man is an amazing speaker and lecturer. And so it was just a really fantastic opportunity. So that's all available on the DDCE website. You can link out to the YouTube videos of his lectures. So if you haven't seen them, I recommend doing it. I've been recommending it to people off campus too. But the other thing that we did in the Cockrell School was we actually had the staff and faculty form these small discussion groups of 5 to 7 faculty or 5 to 7 staff. And we just met once a week in those small groups. So about 65 faculty and staff participated. We met about once a week in those small groups for about an hour, just to kind of distill the information we were getting in the class. And then also, I thought it was really cool, at least in my group, to talk about, and I think this happened in the other groups as well, just to talk about how that could impact what we're doing in the Cockrell School. And there was a bunch of ideas that have already come out of that. And I know my group is planning on continuing to kind of meet for coffee and continue to chat about this and kind of plan for that. And I know a couple of kind of proposals for funding for different initiatives have already come out of that. So I think that was a great way that a lot of us spent a reasonable portion of some time this summer. So
that's really exciting.
It's really cool. Yeah.
What was the last book you read for fun? And I'll kind of expand on that a little bit. What's your kind of favorite recent book as well?
My favorite recent book, or?
Yeah, what was the last book? And also if you have a favorite that you've read somewhat recently.
Okay, this is super nerdy, but I'm a huge Neil Stephenson fan. So my absolute favorite book is The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. And if it's kind of a more obscure Neil Stephenson, I feel like a fanboy, like I feel really terrible right now, but it's a more obscure Neil Stephenson book to begin with, but it's actually about kind of pervasive computing, which is my research area. So that's really cool. And the book I'm in the middle of right now is actually Cryptonomicron, which seems like a strange book for a huge fan of Neil Stephenson to be in the middle of at this point, but it is what it is. And so that's where I am. My family took a little mini vacation. Like, I don't know, we rented a place and stayed inside of it for a week. It was the vacation 2020, right? And so, but the place had a pool, so I couldn't read. I'm reading Cryptonomicron on digitally, so I needed a physical book to read. So I actually read The Water Dancer, I think is the name of the book, by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It was an excellent book. It was kind of a mystical, I don't know what I would say, like kind of a mythical book about kind of slavery and the Underground Railroad. It was actually super interesting, and it was a great book to lay on a pool floating and read. So it was.
Awesome. So we have a question from the chat. So you mentioned earlier that you like to travel. What places have you traveled to, and where would you like to travel to in the future? Once COVID is gone.
So I am fortunate to have some research collaborators in Italy, and I did a research period abroad with those collaborators a few years ago. So and it remains one of my kind of favorite nostalgic places to visit. It was in Trento, Italy, which is kind of in the north. I'm very bad with cardinal directions. Northeastern part of Italy, almost in Austria. So that's my favorite part of the world. I still haven't been able to find a place that matches that. But I like to go back there. I like to visit my friends, but I don't know. I like to see new places too. And I feel like I have not traveled enough in Central and South America, especially for how close it is. So I would like to visit Peru, some other places. And I mean, we were in Belize once, but I wouldn't mind seeing that again. Like just some of those kind of, Central South America, I think would be the place I would go next.
Who do you look up to?
Oh, lots of people. It seems probably my dad. Seems like a strange thing for a middle-aged lady to say. No, my dad's amazing. So my dad has a PhD in economics, and when I was a kid, he worked for the Federal Reserve. And then recently, my parents have moved. They live in Georgetown, Texas, so it's really nice to have them nearby. But it's just the honest truth, right? Whenever I'm kind of frustrated with something or need advice or something, or need somebody to tell me I did it right, it's my dad that I call. And he seems to know kind of what I need, whether I need somebody to criticize the thing I sent or to actually, I just, how you ask somebody, what do you think of this? But you have that tone of voice that says, please don't say anything mean at all, right? Like he can tell that. So that's, I respect that a lot.
Awesome. So for this next question, what do you like to do most? What do you like most about your current role? As a dean.
Yeah. So I like the challenge. It's very, so it's, stepping into it, I knew that it was different than what I do when I teach and when I do research. I mean, that I knew that cerebrally, right? But it's a very different set of tasks, expectations, goals I have to set. And I love that, actually. I need that difference, that diversity of thought, of task. And so I think I really like having that touchstone of something to work on. And I can see that things that we're doing are already having an impact. And I think that's really exciting. I think it's really important work. And I can still see the possibility of just huge impact in the role. And it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of emotional effort, but I think the potential for that impact is just so huge.
All right. As we're wrapping up, Christine, is there any last words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Have fun, and have fun like kind of intellectually too, right? So I think I said this at the beginning, and that's you know, you got to do well in your classes, you got to pay attention to them, you should have fun socially, but also explore your other interests. I mean, this comes from, you know, not having regrets about having done that myself in college, but also even from when we talk to, you know, company reps that want to hire our students, we ask them, what other courses would we add to give to our students? And they say the same thing. You know, take some more creative writing courses, take some public speaking courses, take courses where you learn about the history of the Black experience. Like having this kind of well-rounded kind of set of information coming out of college is really important. So that's my piece of advice.
All right. Well, thanks, Christine. We really appreciate you joining us today. I actually learned quite a bit about you. Usually when we're having conversations, it's, you know, strictly work related, even though I see your daughters coming in and out of the room on the many Zoom meetings that we're on. But it was nice to get to know you in a little bit different way. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciated having you here. All right, so we have Dean Wood who is joining us, and we've introduced ourselves earlier, but for new attendees who might be joining us for the first time, I'd like everybody to go around and introduce themselves. I'm Michele Meyer. I'm the Assistant Dean for Engineering Student Services, and I'm going to be serving as the moderator for the panel today. And then maybe next we'll go to Dean Wood.
Hi, I'm Sharon Wood. I'm Dean of the Cocco School of Engineering, and I'm a structural engineer.
And Sam.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Lebus. I'm a third-year mechanical engineering major, and I am the president of the Student Engineering Council.
All right, Julia.
Hey everyone, I'm Julia. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in the chemical engineering department, and I'm the president of the Graduate Engineering Council.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and I'll kick it over to Sam and he can get us started with the first question.
Awesome. Welcome, Dean Wood. So for our first question, why did you choose to become an engineer?
So that's an interesting question, Sam. It turns out that my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather were all civil engineers. So I'd like to say it's in my genes.
Did you grow up having any pressure that you needed to become an engineer?
No, I didn't. And but I think my dad was thrilled when I decided to study engineering. Yeah. A couple years ago, I won an award from the American Society of Civil Engineers, and so my mom and dad were in Washington D.C. for the award ceremony, and he was just so happy. He was talking to everybody and he was talking engineering, and you know, he was kind of beaming as you do when your kid does something really well. So yeah, it was a great role model for me.
That's really sweet. What is your favorite UT building or spot on campus?
Well, it's where you are, obviously. It's the Engineering Education Research Center. So I've been involved with that building since the very beginning. I was on a committee for UT Austin called the Faculty Building Advisory Committee. And so I had been on that for probably 8 years or so. And so the architects would come in as every building was being designed and talk with this committee and get input. And so when they started the study for the building, Dean Fenves at the time asked me if I'd serve on the executive committee. So it ended up working out really well because he stepped down as dean just as we got permission from the Board of Regents to start the funding or to start construction. And I stepped in and my first meeting was, how are you going to cut $13 million out of the budget? And had I not been involved, there's no way I could have answered that question, right? And so in the end, we were able to take that out of the budget and then add it back in later and build the wonderful building that you are all in right now, at least virtually.
Yes, that's awesome. So what do you like to do with your time when you're away from UT?
So that is easy. I like to ride my bicycle. And I try to get out on my bike every weekend. and I ride as much as I can. I had hoped to go to Colorado this summer and it just didn't work out, but I really like going to the mountains and riding my bike in mountains.
So I know you participated with Texas 4000, which is an organization that helps raise money to fight cancer, and they bike from Austin to Alaska. Can you tell us a little about your experience there and how it relates to your passion of biking?
Yeah, so I've enjoyed, I haven't done the whole route. They have a kickoff route, kickoff ride here in Austin that's open to the population, help as a fundraiser. And I've done that many times. And then twice, I guess, I've been out in California. And then I've ridden across the Golden Gate Bridge and up into Marin County and then up into Sonoma with the group. And it is a lot of fun. I think it's also good to show them that, your faculty can have a passion and can keep up with them, which I don't think they expected that to happen.
Has your bike riding changed since COVID at all? Have you kept it the same amount?
It has changed considerably. So the university closed on a Friday. And that Friday, I placed an order at REI for a smart trainer. And so I now have a virtual training environment in my dining room, which means I get up every morning whenever I want to get up. I can ride for an hour. I can ride in the Alps. I can ride anywhere. And so I've been able to, for the first month, I honestly didn't go out of the house very much at all, only to get groceries. And I was only riding inside. And then I still ride primarily inside now, just because it's so much more efficient and I can get in a really good ride and then get to work. But I do ride outside on the weekends now.
Awesome. Kind of following up on biking, do you have a favorite spot to go biking near Austin?
I do. So my favorite spot to bike near Austin is Liberty Hill, which is north of town. And I live on the north side of town, so it's only about a 20-minute drive for me. And I like to drive to ride, so that way I'm on rural roads that don't have a lot of traffic. But what I like about Liberty Hill is nothing is flat. You're either going up or down. And it's kind of at the edge of Williamson and Burnett counties. And so it's really pretty out there. Yeah, it's very nice. And there, like I said, there isn't a lot of traffic. So that is my favorite place to ride. That's not where I ride most of the time, because most of my friends who I ride with don't live that far north. And so we've been going and riding east out in Manor and Elgin area a lot this summer, and exploring a lot of gravel roads and stuff like that. So it's been fun.
Changing subjects a little bit. What advice do you have for new students?
So my typical advice for new students is go to class. And that's a little hard. That's harder for them to do this year, right now. But my advice is take full advantage of what the university provides, right? If you have an interest, I guarantee there's some kind of student organization that is related to that interest. And so you get to meet people who share your passion. And that's really fun to do. I think talk to faculty. A lot of times the students are intimidated and they don't want to bother a faculty member. But as you just heard from Professor Julien, the students are our lifeblood. They're always bringing new ideas in. And that's the best part of the job, is the students make you feel young. So talk to faculty and find out what they're doing. Don't be embarrassed about asking questions. And then my last piece of advice is really take time to have fun. This is a time, it's really a bonding time, because as a new student in the Cockrell School, everyone around you is also a new student. So you're all trying new things. And as a result, your friendships are going to be deeper than they are at later times in your life. So take the time to develop those friendships. When I was in college, they used to joke, look to your left, look to your right, only one of you will be here at time of graduation. And I like to say, look to your left, look to your right, one of those people will be your best friend for the rest of your life. And I think that's absolutely true. The friendships you establish in college are really important.
That is very true. We have another question from the chat. So someone said, I noticed on some of my syllabuses, some professors recommended setting 3 hours for every hour of class. I was wondering if you could give some study strategies and advice on how to do this.
So I think the answer is yes, that 3 hours is a rough number. I think the best way to approach this, right, is to not procrastinate. And I can procrastinate like the best of people. I guarantee it. So, but that really is a good thing to do it. If there is a textbook, try to read the textbook before going into the class so you're prepared. If you get a homework assignment, start working on it when it's assigned so that you have time to ask questions in the next class. And really just take it in small chunks. But I think staying on top of things rather than saying, oh, that's not due for a week, I'm going to wait until the night before it's due to start that homework assignment, that's where things really go south. Because the problems that you get in college are much more challenging than you had in high school. And I know that that took me quite a while to adjust to that.
What do you like most about your role as the Dean of the Cocco School?
So what I like the most is that I get to be an advocate for everyone in the school. And I think that's, as a faculty member, you focus on teaching your class and you build your research program. But it is really focused on you personally, right? And the people who are very closely related to you. Now as Dean, there are roughly 300 faculty members, 6,000 undergrads, and 2,100 grad students. And I honestly don't even know how many staff members. But I get to represent all of them and try to advocate for all of them. And I think that is the best part of the job, without a doubt.
Awesome. Another question from the chat. Since there are a lot of opportunities that Cockrell School provides, do you have any advice on how to not feel so overwhelmed?
Yeah, that is hard. So time management is something that is really important. And one of the reasons I think time management is important is because you need to set boundaries for yourself and time when you're going to not worry about your homework, right? And just relax. So I mentioned, for example, I like to exercise. And for me, that first thing in the morning is when I do that. And then I come in and I can focus. But I can tell you there were many years in my life where I didn't exercise. I was really stressed out, and I was working more but being much less productive. So I know it's a delicate balance. You can do way too much and just procrastinate. But finding that happy medium of something that you really enjoy doing, you can do it for an hour a day, and it's going to make you more productive and allow you to focus more. I think that's what's really important.
Moderation and prioritization.
There you go. That's right.
When you were in college, what was a project that you worked on or an activity you participated in that you really enjoyed?
So I'll talk first about grad school because I think that's where I really developed my passion for structural engineering. And my PhD research was related to earthquake engineering. So we built small scale reinforced concrete structures, and then we had a shake table, a platform that had an actuator that could shake back and forth, so your building would shake and then wouldn't quite collapse, but it'd be close to collapse at the end. And so it would take you'd spend 9 months building something, and in about 30 seconds, it'd be close to collapse. And then you'd spend the next 3 years trying to analyze the data to figure out why that happened. But that just really fascinated me. And I felt like, there's so many reinforced concrete buildings collapse in earthquakes. I felt like I could really make a difference in the world by coming up with better ways to design concrete buildings. I have to be honest, when I was in college, I spent a lot of time doing things that were not related to engineering. I played in the orchestra, and I absolutely loved that. And so I practiced and performed, and I probably spent more time on the music than I did actually studying engineering, which I probably shouldn't admit, but that's true.
So for our next question, what is something that you're proud of outside of work?
So a few years ago, I started running again. And I ran my first marathon when I was 54. Qualified for Boston on my first marathon, and then I was able to run it a couple years ago. And so I think that's something that you know, after having such a long time off, being able to come back and be competitive was really fun. And then the other thing was right before I became dean, I took a trip where I rode my bike across the Alps. And that was something where I just, you know, again, I was early 50s. That's not something you think you're going to do. And you can. So it just shows if you put your mind to it, you can do a lot of things.
Was that backpacking? Did you have like a huge pack while you were bicycling?
No, it was, it was on a road bike. And so they had a van that would follow us and carry our luggage every day. But the interesting part was my luggage got lost. So my bike arrived and my helmet and my shoes, but no clothing, absolutely nothing. So I was able to borrow things from other people on the trip. I had like 2 Whole Foods shopping bags, and that I carried everything that I owned that I had borrowed in them. And then my luggage came 2 days after I got home from the trip. My luggage arrived at my house. So I had spent 6 months trying to buy the high-tech jersey and the raincoat and all this stuff to have just the perfect gear, and none of it showed up, but it was still the best trip I ever had. So, yeah.
That's a great story, at least.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the lost luggage stuff, it happens sometimes. You just have to roll with the punches.
That's right. That's right. So I figured it's much better to have your bicycle and not have your clothes than to have your clothes and not have your bicycle when you're going on a cycling vacation. Yeah.
Tell us about a time that you failed, and how did you overcome that failure? Not losing your luggage.
Yeah, right. So, you know, I mentioned that my research was in structural engineering. And in structural engineering, what you do is you build something and then you test it to failure. And you understand why it failed, and then you try to make sure it doesn't happen that way again. So in some ways, failure, it's part of what I consider to be just my normal process. And sometimes you design the experiment wrong and it fails and it isn't representative, and it's like, okay, well, I botched that. But most of the time you can learn a lot from failure. And so if I think back, I was a grad student, and I think it was my second semester, and I wasn't taking a class very seriously. And I think I pulled like a 50 on the midterm in that class. And it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I think I focused, I went back, I relearned everything that I had missed, and ended up doing fine in the class. So I think the takeaway from that is that any first grade you get in a class does not mean you're destined to do poorly, but it is a warning shot over the bow that you might have to change the way you're approaching that class. And so that's probably the example I can give that's most relevant to the students today.
We have a question from the chat. What can students do to help keep Cockrell one of the top engineering colleges in the world?
Well, I think one of the reasons we are one of the top engineering colleges in the world is because of the success of our students and the reputation that our alumni have out in the workforce. So keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you come in, you get excited about your courses. Some of you decide to go to grad school, some decide to go out into industry, but our alumni have incredible reputations. And so that's why our reputation is so strong. And that's why so many companies are coming here to recruit our students, is because we have that. So I think, you know, take your classes seriously, right? Try to, and my impression is you wouldn't be studying engineering unless you really wanted to. It's too difficult a subject and it takes too much time. So find that passion, find what really excites you about engineering, because that's where you can make a difference moving forward.
What is your favorite thing about the Cocco School community?
So I was at another university, I won't mention the other university, for 10 years before I came here. And I've been here for 25 years now. But I remember it really is the community, because I had been here for about a week or week and a half. And I was on a phone, I was talking to my mom about my experiences here. And I said, yeah, it's so weird. People stand around and they drink coffee and they laugh and they tell jokes. It's such a great community. And that's exactly my impression, is that the faculty get along. It's a very collaborative place. You come up with some idea that you think is, well, way out there, and you can get someone to collaborate with you and work together, and it's really cool. So I remember I reached out to someone that I didn't know in electrical engineering, and I had this idea. I'd gone to a conference and just heard a couple things and wanted to try to pursue that. And so I sent a blind email to him. He responded, and we ended up collaborating together for 12 years. And it really was, I think, the most creative part of my career, because it was something that neither of us could have done alone, but together we had the expertise to do it. So the only patent that I have in my career came out of that collaboration. And so I think the community part is what I think is the best part. And since I've been dean, I really have gotten to see more about the undergrad student community and the grad student community. So I get to learn a lot more about the entire community.
Awesome. So you participated in the class that Dr. Moore offered this summer.
I did.
What were your important takeaways from it?
So what's interesting is I really had not studied much American history. I think I took two history classes in high school, and then I didn't take any in college. So this was a huge blind spot for me. And just on Sunday, I was listening to a TED Talk where the speaker was African American, and he was talking about common perceptions for African Americans. And I realized that because I had taken Dr. Moore's class, I knew that every one of those common perceptions was wrong. And so it has totally changed how I feel about race in our country. And I thought he was just an incredible speaker. He got so excited in each one of his lectures, and he was at home just looking at a camera, right? He didn't even have a couple faces to look at. But it's such a passion for him. And he did, I thought, such a wonderful job of explaining very difficult concepts. And so I really valued it, and I think it's been a good addition to my educational experience.
What was the last book that you read for fun?
I don't read many books for fun. But one of the books I did read that really has stuck with me was called The Glass Castle. And it's a little old, but it's about a woman who grew up in an extremely dysfunctional family. But she never used that as an excuse as an adult. Where I have a lot of friends who say, oh, my father treated me poorly and that's the way I am. It's like, no, this woman had a terrible background, but overcame all of that and never used that as an excuse. And I was just, that has been, I think, really informative for me.
I have a question from the chat. What excites you the most about the overall growth in Austin? So growth meaning workforce, companies that are coming here, and overall population growth.
So I think certainly with companies coming here, I think it provides us with more areas for collaboration and more jobs for our students. I think one of the things that I really value about Austin is that our faculty can collaborate with industry, which means that the research that our students are working on, the research that they're doing, can have an impact immediately. It's not just a journal paper, it can be implemented. So having new companies like Tesla come in provides opportunities for collaboration. And certainly if we think about, you know, all the automation and autonomy that Tesla is putting in their cars, if Austin can be a test bed for that, I think that's going to be a benefit to everyone. So the disadvantage, obviously, is the traffic, because the traffic in Austin is terrible. Everyone will tell you that it keeps getting worse. And, you know, everyone wants to have it be when they first got here, but we can't. So, but I do think that the opportunities for collaboration and the career opportunities for our students are the primary things that I think are great about having Austin being such a vibrant city.
You mentioned that you have traveled internationally. What is your favorite location outside of the US?
So it's very close to Christine's favorite location. She goes to Trento, Italy, and I go to Bassano del Grappa, Italy, and they're about 30 or 40 miles apart. But Bassano del Grappa is a cycling hub. And so when you go out on a Sunday morning, you might pass 600 cyclists. So it's just an incredible place to ride, because all the drivers are used to having cyclists around, and someone in their family is most likely a cyclist. And so you can ride in the mountains and ride in the beautiful scenery. And you have to respect the cars, obviously, but you don't really have to worry about you don't have to worry so much about the drivers not paying attention to you. So I started going there in 1999, and pretty much I've been there at least once out of every 3 years, usually about one out of every 2 years. And so I just like it. And I think one of the reasons why I really like it is I know all the roads now. So I don't need to stop at every intersection and check my map and figure out which way I should be going. I know where the good roads are. And you know, it's funny, last time I was there last summer, and I hadn't been on a road in 10 years, and I still remembered all the turns, and that's just cool.
So for our next question, who do you look up to?
There are a lot of people I look up to, but I'm going to mention someone who just recently passed away. So Betsy Anker Johnson was a member of the Engineering Advisory Board, and she did not graduate from UT, but she retired here in Austin. And I met her in 2008 when we were both on the search committee for the Dean of Engineering, and that's when Greg Fenves was selected as Dean. And so I was really impressed with Betsy. She was the 4th woman to be elected into the National Academy of Engineering. She had been a vice president at General Motors, and she was a master swimmer. And that's that year when we were doing the search, she went to the World Championships and competed, I think, as like in her early 80s. And so the fact that I admired her from a technical standpoint, I admired her athleticism. I think she is the first person who embodied all the things that I like to attribute to. It was like a real role model for me for maybe the first time. So she just passed away this summer, but she was an incredible friend for the Cockrell School, and we really miss her.
Thanks for sharing that, Sharon. She sounds amazing. We're getting ready to wrap up here. Are there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our students who are still on the line with us?
So I'm going to go back to the first question. Go to class, meet the faculty, and take time to have fun. I think the Cockrell School is a wonderful place, and you will find a community where you feel comfortable, but you are going to have to work harder than you probably have worked in your life. But it's going to be worth it, and we have complete confidence that you'll be successful. So welcome to the Cockrell School. We're really happy to have you.
All right, thanks for joining us, Dean Wood and Julien. Sam, thanks for asking the questions and being great hosts for our Q&A session. And I'm really looking forward to starting the semester tomorrow. So to all the students who are joining us today, go out there and hook 'em.